Adam, one of the criticisms, speaking if we can sort of rationally here, is that some of the issues that have plagued City in this game sort of reared their ugly head again after last season. Obviously, transition, like we spoke about in part one, conceding goals, sort of lackadaisical defending at times. I'm not going to sit here and say that Edison had a great game because he absolutely didn't. He parried one into, I think it was Ruben Diaz, and it sort of fell to the Al Hilal player, and he scored. And a couple of goals, he was statues. I sort of hinted at it before. I don't know that, like, for me, those aren't just overnight fixes. A bit of it is personnel. A bit of it might be sort of fatigue, mentally, physically. A bit of it might be tactics. Whatever it is. Ruben Diaz had a real sort of hard night with balls that went over the top. At the same time, some of the critics, and I think there is some maybe credence to these criticisms, points to the fact that Kusanov was on the bench, that Nico Gonzalez hasn't really had a sniff. Obviously, Vita Heiss, I think, is being lumped in there, but I would not necessarily have him in the same category because he was a bit of a different signing. With Kusanov, he came and he did play and then sort of disappeared. Same with Nico Gonzalez a little bit. I understand why people are frustrated from that. My sort of comeback for it would be, well, let's see it when it really matters. If this is happening 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season, yeah, fair. We'll be the first ones to speak up. But I just find it difficult to really take too much away from it because of all of the sort of factors that we've spoken about.
I completely agree. I don't think you can necessarily read into specifically Pep's decisions on personnel as, well, Nico Gonzalez didn't play in this tournament, which means he was a waste of a signing and he's not going to play any role this season. You look back at every individual lineup that City have played in this competition, and they're all drastically different from one another for the most part. Against Wydad, City played one midfielder. It was Tijani Reinders. I mean, obviously Cherki and Foden are midfielders, but not in the Pep mold of a Bernardo Silva or an Ilkay Gundogan. And then Nico Gonzalez played the game against Al Ain. So as much as people want to be up in arms about some City fans calling this a preseason tour or glorified preseason, all that kind of stuff, I think a lot of the personnel decisions showed that it was being treated that way, in the sense of, you're going to experiment. You're going to play some players out of position to get minutes in their legs. You're going to play one set of players one night and another set of players another night. I think if you read into this Al Hilal game as, because Pep played this lineup in a knockout game against a decent team, therefore that is revealing what he views as his best lineup going into the season, I think that's a ridiculous thing to take away from this. I think it's ridiculous. He played, probably in the 4 games, he played 4 totally different setups and totally different sets of players. We're not going to see that across 4 games in a Premier League season. It's going to be, far less variance. And the players now go on break. They'll come back. They'll have training. And as has been pointed out elsewhere,
long, I think, by the way, which is massive.
Which is great.
If this maybe again is fickle, but if you told me that you can have the Club World Cup victory or you can have the players going off for a month, I think I go for the month break. Look, it might be different when City are 4-0 down to Wolves on the first game of the season because they've just had holidays for a month. I don't know, but that I think could be invaluable for City next year.
I think we're at a point now where the break is so much more valuable than friendlies. I think it just is, with how much football these players have played. And this is going back years now where they haven't really had decent summer breaks. So there's been a summer tournament every season and preseason tours in different countries. And, it was literally in the middle of this past season where we were calling for players like Phil Foden to go on holidays in the middle of the season. That's the point we were at. And that wasn't just because of fitness issues, but just because of some players and where they were at in their heads. But one thing that I think is really important from this tournament in terms of how we build into next season, and this has been pointed out elsewhere, and I think it's really valuable, is now these new players, Ryan Aït-Nouri, Ryan Cherki, Tijani Reinders, these players that are going to be hopefully a big part of how City move forward as a club into this new era. They now have very valuable, tape to look at when they sit down for for training and they do little film sessions and stuff in a couple of weeks' time, it's not looking back at how we've played in the past. It's we already have an example of how you play with us and how we can correct what you did in this situation and all that kind of stuff. So I think people can take what they want out of this, but I think if you put some truth serum into Pep Guardiola and the players, I think they would tell you that the most valuable part of this was that it was a preseason style thing, that they could try out different things, they could get some of the new players blooded in, and now they go have a big break, they come back, they start training, and they focus on, the big boy football.
Yeah. Um, Joe, I mean, look, it is disappointing City aren't going to be Club World Cup champions. Who knows, maybe in 15, 20 years' time, this competition is heralded as one of, if not the biggest in the world. And you might look back at this situation where City had a quarter-final against Fluminense and a potential semi-final against either Chelsea or Palmeiras. And, then you're in a final and you might go, oh, yeah, that's disappointing. You wanted City to win it. They might not make it back to another. Although you're looking at the way FIFA is speaking about already expanding it, I would probably suggest that that will be the case. But just to sort of round it off, obviously, losing to Al Hilal is what it is. Firstly, what have you made of the tournament? What have you made of City being in the tournament? And secondly, to finish on a high, because it's been a day of negatives, especially online. What are your biggest positives from the Club World Cup for City?
I think Adam kind of touched on it for me, and it was like the fact that this has got that pre-season feel, but it's just ever so slightly more competitive, so that you're not just playing like an AC Milan heavily rotated, a Bayern Munich heavily rotated, but they know in the back of their minds it is pre-season. Like, let's not overextend, let's not do too much that might cause us an injury, etc. I think that was what I think has been the benefit for City, is that we've effectively got a pre-season with a bit more competitive element, so we can see, we've got these tapes of these players now and how they play with us, but it's not just in, an environment where they all knew it's pre-season, don't really matter. There was genuinely something on the line now that meant the other teams tried harder against us, and so did we against them. So it meant that we've got sort of a better example than maybe if we played a normal pre-season, against the likes of, I guess I'm coming back to 2022, 23 and seasons like that, where we played Bayern Munich and it was like, well, you did get a thunderstorm in the middle of it and you did get a really rotated team, and it was a bit sort of like, well, it's pre-season, you don't need to do too much for it. So I think it's been good for City. I think there's a lot of positives we can take from it. We've been able to see our new signings in the flesh. We've been able to see what they can bring to the team. Really good examples of what they can do, i.e. that Cherky assist for the Foden goal was just absolute filth. It was very KDB-esque. And I think, maybe we don't see that if there's not maybe the like round of 16 aspect, if it's just a friendly. So I think, and stuff like that has been very beneficial for City. And look, they've got probably 50, 60 million for 2 weeks work in a nice sunny Miami and Orlando, and they've had a nice experience. With that, now they've got a month off. That's going to benefit them even more. The fact that we have got knocked out early, it would be a bit of a bummer if you get to the final, lose it, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later you're back in the Prem. So you're kind of right. If you want to get knocked out, you want to get knocked out early. We've kind of got the best bit of the best of both worlds, where you do get your payday still, but you still get your month off. You still get to see all the positive stuff around the players, etc. And we've been able to see some of the issues that may plague City next season, and that's going to not be beneficial for us as fans, but for the coaches to sort of figure out what they have to do. We clearly know creating chances isn't the issue. It's probably more just being clinical. Maybe in transition, that's something we have to look at again. Maybe we don't get that if we don't have this extra competitive aspect of being at a Club World Cup, this revamped tournament. If it is just a friendly, maybe we don't see that. So I think there has been a lot of positives to take from it for City. Of course, there's some negatives, but as we say, take them with a pinch of salt. It's not the be-all and end-all. I don't really know what my positive moment of my best moment of the Club World Cup, I suppose.
It's got to be
City,
Pep doing keepy-uppies on the beach, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. You know what? Actually, yeah, the sort of the Baywatch vibes of that sort of social media post was, yeah, I'll give it that then. I think that was so we haven't seen Pep do that in a while, and it was quite nice to see him just sort of, well, not even just Pep, but all the players happy. That's been maybe that's my positive. There you go. I found it now. Everyone looked happy, especially those 2 games. Everybody looked like, although it's been a grueling long season, if we're still counting it as last season, they looked happy to play the football. Foden looked like he was playing football with a smile on his face. A lot of other players looked like they were relishing the hot sun and playing in these new stadiums, playing against these new opposition. It looked like they genuinely enjoyed their football again. And I think, as a fan, that's what you want to see your players feeling like.
Yeah. Adam, to finish off, because I remember when we sort of broke before the season, as the season finished for the Premier League, and then obviously the Club World Cup, and a lot changed in that time. We had obviously Reinders came in, Ryan Knight-Nouri came in, Ryan Shirky came in. It's likely going to be exits, and probably not that many surprises. Even the ones you might not expect probably have been mooted. John Stones, Ake, one of them might go. Maybe even a Kanji. It's probably going to be Grealish, Calvin Phillips, Kyle Walker, maybe a goalkeeper. Ortega sort of hinted that his future might be elsewhere. But what do you want to see from City off the pitch, the City executives, the transfer gurus and whatnot, between now and them coming back for the start of the new season?
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking today when we were having the conversation about Savinho and Doku, and I think the squad, specifically in the sort of midfield and attacking area, might be a little bloated. I think there might actually be a bit too many options, especially given how Pep stands by that he wants, even though there was about a 2-week period he said he would take a bigger squad. He's already reversed that numerous times since then. But I don't think that any of those wingers or attackers will necessarily go out the door. But in terms of what I want to see, I don't know. I mean, if no more signings were made, I think I'd be fine with that. I think that the squad has improved enough that when you sprinkle in this new little bit of stardust with some of the unks and some of the players that we're still waiting for to develop a bit more, and your Savinhos and Dokus, and getting the best out of Phil Foden again, I think I'd be fine with that. So I guess it really is maybe just trimming the fat a little bit, and the players who aren't going to play a role, move them on. Whether that's John Stones or Jack Grealish or players like that. I think find them a new home, get that sort of that vibe of will he stay, will he go, away from the team, I suppose. And I think when you come back for training in 3 weeks' time, the 24, 25 players that are really going to contribute to the season, that is defined. Those 24, 25 players are defined. And then you can sort of build from there. And I'm really excited to see what it looks like on the first day against Wolves, because I think that it's going to look nothing like what we've seen in any of these Club World Cup games. There may be a little combination of some of them, but I'm interested to see, does Pep see Ryan Shirky as the Kevin De Bruyne replacement, or does he see Phil Foden as the Kevin De Bruyne replacement? Is Marmoush a winger? Is he a striker? I think there's a lot of question marks that exist within the set of players that's already here that makes me excited enough for that opening day.
Yeah, Joe, same question. What do you want to see between now and the start of the Premier League season?
I think I totally agree with Adam. I think we need that sort of, are they going to stay or go, done quickly as possible, so that you can figure out, is there still room to put more players in the squad, and if not, then you can start to think about how you're going to approach certain games with the group of players you've got. That early on, that's sort of one of the best things you can have. But I think for me, maybe I'll get swarmed on Twitter for this, but I want Ederson to stay. I think that's the right decision for him to stay. I see no problem with him staying, but I'd be happy for Ortega to go if we got a number 2 who could challenge Ederson like Ortega has done previously, maybe less so in the last couple of months. But we saw when he was faced with the fact that there could be a number 2 that really could take Ederson's spot as number 1, he did pull it out the bag. I mean, that Champions League run, in the Champions League, I mean, mate, some of them saves in the final, and I thought he was brilliant, and I think that's.
But remember,
probably...
Edison cost City the Champions League on several occasions, so that they don't count clearly. Tongue firmly in cheek there. I saw someone say that they'd have 3 more Champions Leagues if it wasn't for Edison. Well, actually, really only have 1 because of that final. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot more factors that contribute to some of the lack of Champions Leagues, i.e. no Rodri, i.e. Sterling miss against Lyon, etc., etc. But I just think rather than make a complete overhaul in a certain position, i.e. goalkeeper, I don't think you just have to shoo him out the door. I think you just get someone in there who can push him to be his best self. I think that is what made Edison the best version that we've seen of him. So why don't we just refresh the second goalkeeper position? Unfortunately, Trafford's probably off the table now, but I think if we can get anyone in there that can sort of push him to be that best self, I think that's probably the only... That or obviously Livramento, basically, but that could drag on till deadline day at this rate. So that is my sort of... Those two are my number 1 sort of signings that I want to see happen.
Yeah, very, very quickly, final word. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being paramount, City don't win a single match of football next season if they don't sign Tino Livramento and / another right back. Joe, what are you saying?
What were we saying? 10 is we don't win a single game.
10 is the sky will fall out and City will go not 38.
I'd probably say like a 4 or 5. I mean, that even kind of sounds a bit high, really. I think Núñez can do a job. I mean, we kind of saw not necessarily how crucial he is, but kind of how important he was last night. I mean, when he came off the pitch and we put Akanji there at right back, the build-up play was like just completely shook from top to bottom. So I think, I think if we do have him in there, he can do a pretty solid job. Just hope he doesn't get injured, I hope him or Rico doesn't get injured, and we have to rely on Akanji at right back, I suppose, is my gripe. But I think we'd do fine if we didn't sign him. I'm pretty confident we will, but I think we cope all right.
Interesting, Adam.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I think like a 4 is the highest I'd be willing to go. And my hot take is, if City don't sign Livramento or another right back, I think that the right back position will be up for grabs between Kusanov and Núñez.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'll probably stick a little bit higher on the Livramento need. I might go 5.56. I think in the sense that he is probably not the last missing piece of the jigsaw in terms of City go on and be all conquering again, but that is by far, I think, the weakest part of City's squad.
Yeah, I agree. I think we had this conversation a little bit last year. I think that Núñez is very much a Zinchenko style player in terms of when he's in a functioning squad, or as you put it, an all conquering squad, he's completely fine option. I think if you'd stuck, title winning Zinchenko into this team last season, he would have been found out just as much as Núñez had in certain moments. We'll get on to like more deeper tactical stuff heading into the season, especially when the squad is a bit more defined and some of the players leave. But I think there is a world in which, because Ait-Nouri and Doku give you so much together on that left-hand side, and that maybe leaves you a little bit exposed, perhaps the right-hand side becomes a bit stronger defensively. And over there we see Phil Foden or Bernardo Silva on that wing and a center back as a right back. I know there's a lot of people that won't necessarily be happy about that, but when you think back to the treble winning team, which I think of all the Pep teams is the team that found the most balance between being direct and solid, that was, playing with 4 center backs. And yeah, so anyways, we'll get deeper into that as the summer rolls on, but there's certainly a lot of, I think, options to be made.
We've learned anyway, Adam, that no matter what you say, mate, someone will find something to moan about. So I won't worry about what you have to say.
100%, yeah.
As it goes.
I don't strive to be loved. I've got enough love in the house. I don't need it on the internet.
Wonderful. You're in the right place for that.